Hey, Teddy K here for the Best Buy blog, and in this video review, we take a look at the Samsung Galaxy Book S, one of 3 laptops that Samsung has launched in its re-entry into the Canadian market. After being out of the Canadian market for years, Samsung is back with its laptops, and this is, I guess you could say, the entry level of the 3 that they've launched this year. So the Galaxy Book S is, in many ways, the kind of laptop that you'd be looking for if you wanted performance with some efficiency thrown in as well, but you're not necessarily looking for all the bells and whistles. And frankly, it doesn't have all the bells and whistles because there are things you got to sacrifice along the way. I'm going to start out right from the beginning and say this is not a gaming machine. So if you are even considering this for gaming, it's just not, the graphics, the GPU, the CPU, they're not really made for that. And moreover, this has a 13.3-inch 1080p display. Now, it's a beautiful screen, don't get me wrong, but the resolution is probably not going to be as high as you'd want it to be if you were going to be doing some gaming on this. No, this is more of a productivity device, and for the most part, it does that well, so long as you kind of manage some of the intricacies. So for example, while I was using it, I found like, okay, well, the keyboard is nicely laid out, and I didn't like that the shift key on the left side was so small. But this is a bilingual keyboard to some degree. Now, the model I have here, the review unit I tested, was from Korea, so there were some slight variations, but generally I got an idea of what to expect. Now, one thing that I did note is that first of all, the laptop is really, really nice. It's thin, it's light, it's easy to carry, very portable. Touchscreen is very responsive. It's just well built. So this isn't a cheap laptop by any means. The Intel Lakefield processor is one of those chipsets that, again, is also a managing sort of thing where, it's like performance, efficiency, battery life, that sort of thing. So that kind of overshadows what is going on here. And I think, like I said, you're gonna have to manage everything. So when it comes to actually using the laptop for whatever it is you need to do, you have to measure your productivity based on how much multitasking you're doing. So for example, if I had a lot of tabs open on a web browser and I wanted to edit photos in Lightroom and Photoshop, and then maybe listen to music on Spotify, it's gonna bog this thing down eventually. So that's why I say that if you're in a more creative field, this may not be enough for you. But if you're looking for productivity as it relates to word processing, spreadsheets, you want to do a little photo editing, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, you get what I mean? Like it's more of sort of dabbling in different things or doing tasks that are supportive of the main task. So for me, as I wrote the review for this on this keyboard, and I love the keyboard in terms of its responsiveness, just the key travel, all that stuff is great. Even the trackpad's very responsive, so everything's good. Windows runs well on this machine too. I didn't really have a problem with that. Generally speaking, the laptop runs fine. But rather than like video being an issue, you can stream Netflix for hours on this thing and not have a problem, and it looks really good on here too because of the HDR. It's the multitasking. The multitasking is ultimately where things either go awry or they can work out well depending on how you manage what it is you're doing. So I found really intensive apps like Photoshop would work fine if they were on their own, but if I was running Lightroom on top of that, or if I was running a browser with a lot of different tabs open at the same time or streaming music, things would start to slow down, and that is going to be a problem if that is your regular workflow. So that's why battery life is all the more important, because Samsung rates this at 17 hours, up to 17 hours. You're never going to get there. That rating is really based on just it sitting idle, 50% screen brightness, assuming the screen's even on, it's probably asleep. That's not to say that you won't get a high number, but you certainly won't get anywhere close to that, especially if what you're doing is more intensive. So what I tended to do was to try and manage that. Now the battery saver mode will kick in at about 25% by default. I had to manage the battery as I went along. So if I was at 50% and I saw that, okay, I'm basically doing a series of tasks here that are going to be pretty intensive, I'm going to have to maybe move it to battery saving as opposed to best performance. Best performance could work if I was doing one particular task. So if I had just had Photoshop or Lightroom open and I went to best performance, it generally was okay. It wasn't really bad. Video editing is not something I did on here because I just didn't trust it, to be honest. Not that it wasn't capable, but just that if I had anything else open at the same time, I really don't know how well it would have worked given the experiences I had with everything else. If this was Samsung's only laptop, I would be disappointed, but because there's the Ion and the Flex in Samsung's lineup, this one really, you have other options if you want something that's more intricate, more performance focused. This here is one of those, like, I don't know, I would describe it more like a laptop that just kind of tries to do everything in bits and pieces, if that makes sense. It's an everyday laptop, even a student laptop, something that can do a lot of things, but not all of them at the same time, or even most of them at the same time. After all, the specs here are modest. So you've got 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of internal storage. Yes, there's a micro SD card slot. There are the 2 USB-C ports as well, headphone jack. So it's pretty basic in that regard. And so if you need more space, but especially more RAM. So the multitasking thing that I've been harping about here is largely to do with the RAM. 8 gigs is just not enough. And I find it's not enough for most laptops these days. And at this price point, I would have liked to have seen Samsung offer something at 16 gigs. They don't, unfortunately, nor do they offer an LTE option. So this laptop is available in other markets with an LTE option so that you can get mobile data on it, but unfortunately that's not available here, and I wasn't able to test it as a result. So ultimately, is it a good laptop? Yeah, but it's good for, again, bits and pieces. That's it. If that's all you need, you don't need all the bells and whistles, you just need something that's a bit of a workhorse and can do things that you need to do without going overboard, you shouldn't have any problem with this laptop. But if you need something more, definitely look elsewhere, because this probably will not be good enough for everything that you need to do. And that's my review of the Samsung Galaxy Book S for the Best Buy blog. I'm Teddy K. Thanks for watching.